Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Covestro Live. I am Niko Palosuo, live from Pittsburgh, PA, and in this series, we meet innovators from around the world. We explore how circular economy is becoming reality. So last month, we met Beatriz Luz from Brazil and Melissa Bilek from the United States. We explored various circular approaches on what it takes to design waste out of the system. And today, we want to go deeper into the topic of recycling and talk about its role as a part of circular economy. Now, the recent news from record-breaking heat waves from around the world, I think, state the obvious. The consequences of our linear economy are becoming increasingly apparent. I mean, we have to move away from fossil resources and really reimagine waste. Today, we examine the recycling methods available today and assess how far they have been developed. We will take a closer look at one prominent example, mattresses. We sleep 1/3 of our lives, often on a mattress, sometimes on a sofa or on a car seat or wherever. So I think that's a really valid example. So we'll discuss which recycling technologies could be feasible for this specific product and delve into Covestro's innovative chemical recycling technology. Which brings me into today's panelists. First, we have Professor Dr. Peter Seeberger from the to-be-established Center of the Transformation of Chemistry. Welcome, Peter, live from Potsdam. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
And we have also Covestro's recycling guru, if I may call you so, Karin Clauberg, Covestro platform lead for circular economy, live from sunny Solingen. Welcome, Karin.
Yeah, hello everybody. And Nico, thank you for this very nice introduction. And I'm very happy to be here today and also to explain to you what we are actually doing in mattress recycling.
Perfect. So for our audience, maybe we start with short introductions. Peter, let's start with you. Can you share with our audience what you do and how you're involved in shaping the future of circular economy?
Yeah, I'm a chemist and biochemist. I direct the Max Planck Institute for basic research. But a couple of years ago, I suggested that we should start a new research center in Germany. And we entered into a competition. And amongst 100 proposals, we were selected to set up a center for the transformation of chemistry. The idea is to convert the chemical industry into a circular economy to get away from fossil starting materials to renewables and to recycling. And we're establishing this center for 1,000 people about an hour and a half south of Berlin right now as we speak.
That's very impressive, and I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that soon. Karin, same question to you. What do you do and what is your role?
I am a mechanical engineer by training, and I started my career at that time at Bayer Material Science in 2010. And I actually always worked in very innovative projects within the area of R&D and industrial marketing. And since 2019, I'm responsible for Covestro's flexible foam recycling activities. And actually at that time, when we started, no one really believed that we will be able one day to set the targets for chemical recycled polyurethane foams. Our research started actually in 2019, as I said, within the PuriSmart project. And the idea here was basically to develop a process to chemically recycle both main components that are used in such applications. The project was funded by the European government and successfully finished by end of last year. And we are very happy to say that for the first time ever in the PU industry, at least to our knowledge, we could prove that PU foam is really chemically recyclable. We've been able to demonstrate that the recovered raw materials coming from our pilot plant in Leverkusen could completely replace their fossil counterparts in the mattress application. And this is actually a really breakthrough for the industry. And currently we are working very hard on the further development of this technology and its commercial implementation as well.
Thanks, Karin, and we'll learn shortly more about that going forward. Before we go further into the dialogue, let me remind you, dear audience, and that's you right there, that you can and should be a part of this conversation. So feel free to type in your comments, observations, or protests in the chat on your platform, and we will be able to see them here and react to them in real time. We also have a Slido poll up, so you can have your say. And I see you have already done that, so continue to go to slido.com and type in the hashtag recycle and just vote. The first poll is up already. We are asking you, what do you think could be done to achieve higher recycling quotas, as the situation around the world is very, very different? So let's go into a little bit deeper into the topic of circular economy. In our last episode, we discussed already some aspects of it, but I think, Peter, you have a unique perspective to driving circular economy. As you just mentioned, I mean, you're doing crazy things. You're planning to transform an old sugar factory from the 1880s 2 hours south from Berlin into the center you just mentioned. So can you talk a little bit about how you envision circular economy going forward and maybe talk a little bit also about the role of recycling you see in that?
Yeah, so I think we have a unique opportunity to get 1.25 billion euros to start this center by the government. And the government said, look, you can do anything you want, but it should be something that creates, by the end of the day, a new type of economy. And the goal is not just to do good research, but have a societal impact, and more importantly, to create jobs. So this area south of Berlin has a long tradition in the chemical industry. It was not always a very clean place, lots of environmental issues. And so we decided that we would like to really go after a holistic approach to the transformation of chemistry. So we have 5 main topics we go after. One is automation. One is the use of artificial intelligence in chemistry, which very much interacts with automation. The third aspect is recycling, because we realize that if we get away from fossil resources such as gas and oil, we will have to run things in a circle. We need renewable resources, and we need economics, because we need new processes that got to be economically viable. And really, we take this holistic approach, and we work with many companies, Covestro being one of 140 companies, because I believe it's really a generational task that we have to face. And we also know that even such a large center like the one I'm directing won't be able to do it alone. We can only do it in a global effort, in an effort between academia and industry, because we have to solve this problem. We have to solve it fast.
So, and that's. I mean, I probably have not heard of another project that would really take in such a wide stakeholder group, and also a global stakeholder group. I mean, you're working not only in Germany, but really from stakeholders across the world. So happy to hear more about that going forward. Karin, Peter mentioned already Covestro as a partner in this, but how would you characterize the role of recycling in Covestro's path to circular economy?
Yeah, produce, consume, dispose. I think that we all have understood that this linear system, leads to a dead end. We need to switch to the circle idea. Products need to be used longer. They have to be designed in such a way that they can be repaired, they can be recycled. At the end of life, products are valuable resources, and we must try to avoid waste as much as possible. We at Covestro, perhaps the entire chemical industry, we are experiencing a very big transformation. We are trying to change our raw material space away from petrochemical raw materials towards the more sustainable raw material sources, such as biomass, CO2, and of course waste. So to this end, though, we have established some years ago a long-term strategic program and aligned our research and development projects with the United Nations sustainability goals. Our goal is really to integrate circular economic principles and become a pioneer for the entire plastics industry. So with this, we are developing innovative recycling technologies that are less carbon intensive than the conventional production. And we are focusing here clearly on feedstocks such as polycarbonate and polyurethane from plastics, for which Covestro supplies raw materials. And last but not least, we have created an initiative last year making innovative recycling a priority for the entire company. And we call this ongoing evolution of recycling EvoCycle. We want to transform the industry by turning waste into valuable resources and significantly reduce our CO2 emissions. And what is more important, we are not doing this alone. We are collaborating with partners, with academia, from all fields of collection, recycling. And with this, we are really able to multiply the impact from this joint expertise across the entire circular chain. And the first initiative is EvoCycle mattress, the project that I'm responsible for.
Thanks, Karin, and we'll hear more about the mattress soon. But maybe let's touch a little bit on the issue, which I think is quite evident at hand, that people and the world is not recycling enough today. Obviously, we are not yet living in a circular economy because stuff is still put out on landfills here in the US. I can see it on a daily basis. In Germany, maybe it's a little bit better in terms of recycling quotas. Why are recycling quotas so low, and what maybe could be done to improvement? Peter, let's start with you. How do you see this?
Well, I think in many cases, Germany being a good example, people are really willing to recycle and they make a good effort. But oftentimes we are still lacking with technologies in many areas. And I think mattress is a good example that you show that it can be done and it's done. But I mean, if you think about it, we are over 40,000 chemicals that we are producing in the European Union. We have a long way to go, not just in the organic area, but also in the inorganic area. If you think about batteries, people recycle them, but then again, the lithium is typically not recycled in those cases. Car batteries, phosphoric acid. So there are many, many examples, and I think in many cases we are just simply lacking the chemical technologies to do that. And that's part of what we do at our center. We're trying to provide the chemical basis that can then be taken on by companies like Covestro and others to actually implement them on a large scale. And I think that's the other thing we always think about. The solutions we have to come up with are solutions that should not just work in an academic lab on a small scale. They have to actually be economically feasible, and they got to be done on really large scale in order to make a difference. And that's one of the things we're also tackling.
And I think you touched on a really important point, Peter. I mean, circular economy needs to be economic. It needs to make financial sense for the system to work.
Yeah, perhaps I can add something, because
Yes, please.
I think the technologies is for sure something that is very important, and that's the key. But we should also not forget that only collected waste can be recycled. And I think that this is something that is missing, and it is really necessary to improve our global waste and disposal, and as well the collection and sorting systems. I think that in addition, also regulations should prohibit even the disposal of plastics in landfills. This would help a lot also for us to push these technologies also towards industrialization.
Let's take a look at what our dear audience has already shared with us until now. Let me make that bigger so we can see it. So this is what our audience thinks about how recycling quotas could be driven forwards. What do you guys think?
Well, I think the idea of regulation is also one of education. I think one of the aspects we have to educate the regulatory agencies of what is technically possible and what's technically not possible. Because I think as we advance technologically, we may be able to implement recycling in other areas we haven't touched upon yet. The other thing I totally agree with is the implementation of full cost calculations, because typically we just leave environmental cost out of this equation. I think that is changing now as we speak. And again, the educational aspect of consumers falls all within the same area from my perspective.
Karin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's important that legislators create somehow competitive framework conditions for the development and also implementation of this recycling technologies and systems. I mean, the establishment of this new recycling routes goes really hand in hand with very high investments in new processes, not only in the processes, but also in the entire infrastructure. And the taxes should not overburden stakeholders in this value cycle.
That's, I think, great to see how our audience, feels also very similar to what you guys are mentioning in your comments. Before we talk maybe a little bit more about different recycling technologies, let me just ask you this. Given the push for even better recycling technologies and the goals of the societies to be, well, say, carbon neutral by 2035 or 45, how do you believe that we can produce a mattress or a car in 20, let's say, 35? Let's be ambitious, with fully recycled materials. Who wants to go first? Peter?
Happy to do so. I can tell you we have large car companies as partners of the CTC, for example, BMW, and they've said that around 2040 they like to have completely recyclable cars. And they're working very hard towards that. But by the end of the day, this is not really a challenge for a car company. This is really a challenge for chemical companies. If you think about all the different aspects that go into a car, the fact that most of these cars are glued nowadays, you're going to have to think about glues, which you can again take apart, materials, and there's so many materials that you can have to handle, organic, inorganic, and metals and so on. I think we can make a long way towards that goal. And I think the important thing is to set the goal and then take small steps towards that. So for me, by the end of the day, it's not important if you can recycle 100% by 2040. I think the important thing is that we now tackle this issue, and I think there will be business opportunities and people will rise to the occasion. And then by the end of the day, if you recycle only 80%, I think then that's okay, as long as we try as hard as we can and go towards that goal. But I don't want is people say, oh, we can never handle it anyway, and so let's just not do anything because we just can't do it. I think we have to take a can-do attitude and we have to approach this. I think that is the important part.
I love, Peter, your combination of conviction and ambition and optimism. Karin, are you able to provide mattress manufacturers an opportunity to create fully 100% fossil-free
I
mattresses?
think that the question is really very interesting, but yeah, honestly spoken, I doubt that we will be really able to make a mattress really fully recyclable already, in 10 to 15 years. So I mean, this processes needs to be developed, they needs to be pushed into scale, and also the recycling systems need to be established, and yeah, I agree. No? I mean, we are starting, and we need to keep going, and that's the most important thing. And let's see where we will be then in 10, 15 years.
Thanks, Karin. So let's talk a little bit about the impact of new technologies to kind of get us on that path of circular economy. I know, Peter, I mean, your Center for Transformation of Chemistry is looking at various aspects. What kind of role do you see of the technologies which haven't been invented yet to kind of make it a reality? I think you mentioned also super interesting topics like using KI and digitalization to kind of solve the issues which may appear unsolvable today, but may become solvable maybe in 5 to 10 years. Who knows?
I think it took 170 years to set up a chemical industry as it stands today. And I think, honestly speaking, the chemical industry is immensely efficient. There's almost no waste. It's fully integrated and everything is used in some way, shape, or form. And take such a complex system, take it apart and totally change it, also from a logistic standpoint. If you think about today, we have oil or gas coming at one point. In the future, recycling will have to be collected. It's a logistic challenge as well. The same goes for renewable materials from that perspective. So everything has to change. I think that is an immense challenge. The other thing I see is, and I'm allowed to say this as an academic, we work on really interesting problems, but oftentimes academia does not see the practical problems that are out there. And maybe for us, it's maybe not important to develop the nth catalyst to do some reaction that nobody uses, but maybe it's really interesting also to think about working on recycling. And this is something that many of the top academics maybe didn't really think about because why do I want to work with waste, right? But by the end of the day, if you start thinking about closing the circle, we can also think about new materials, because right now we're talking about materials that already exist. But some of the things that are going on I'm excited about are new materials that are already built with the circularity in mind. So you have maybe the same function by the end of the day, the same nice mattress, but maybe the materials you're using actually are different ones that you have an easier time to actually take apart into building blocks and you can reassemble. So I see a lot of opportunity for chemists and engineers to come together. And I think I like to refocus some of the thinking of our academic colleagues to really go after some of those really important challenges for our society.
Thanks, Peter. Karin, what do you believe that designing for circularity is that also a mindset change?
Yeah, I think that this mindset change should be there. No? So I mean, people they are more thinking in how they should design their products, that we need to recycle it, or that we should even use them longer. And yeah, this is a mindset change. But I think that now most of the people they are being more and more educated and also convinced that we need to work on this issue.
Cool. Thank you very much. Let me again look at the Slido to see what our dear audience, if there are any new ones. There are a couple of new ones that have joined the club, but I do think that this encompasses the width of topics that need to be addressed as we get into higher recycling quotas. I think this is super interesting because it is both a technological, a societal, and a chemical challenge that needs to be solved. let me actually open up now a second Slido before we go a little bit deeper into the topic of mattress, which I think is super interesting because everybody knows what a mattress is, and everybody knows how big it is and what kind of materials it has eaten. But before we go there, let me open the second Slido question that addresses also the topic that Karin, you will be talking about, and the question is as follows. Let me show it on the big screen. Which recycling technology do you think holds the most promise for the future, as they are different recycling? And here we go. There's already a live comment. Firelight. Okay, let's put this back and let's have Karin talk a little bit more about this topic, because I know you have been, and you mentioned in the beginning, you have worked with mattress mattress as a case in point. So, Karin, maybe you can talk a little bit about what different recycling technologies or a combination of those you have been looking at for a mattress, and why did you go for chemolysis that you mentioned? And maybe you can talk a little bit about how it works and when we can expect to see maybe some higher and broader results.
So actually, waste produced during the production of mattresses and upholsteries are being mechanically recycled since decades. Today, almost all PU foam production and conversion waste is sold by foamers as trim foam for pillow filling, for example, and also to produce bonded foam applications. And here we are talking about carpet underlay or gym mats. Trim foam is not dirty, it is not contaminated with other materials, and they have usually the same specifications as they are originated from this big produced PU foam blocks. I mean, that is really a good solution for production waste, and it works very good. However, we are talking here about a downcycling, and these mechanically recycled materials can be hardly recycled again, as they are a composite material. And the real problem comes really into place when we talk about end-of-life polyurethane foams, from used mattresses or upholsteries, for example. In Europe, 14 million mattresses are discarded every year. And just for you to imagine, so if they were all stacked up, the pile would be 900 times the height of the Mount Everest.
That's a lot of mattresses.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really a very huge waste stream. And after 10 or 15 years of usage, these mattresses are very dirty and in the most cases not really suitable for being mechanically recycled. And on the other hand, they cannot be really recycled as they are not collected, at least here in Europe. And I think this problem is not only a European problem. So we have here in Europe only some countries that have established yet collection system for mattresses, but this is for sure just the beginning, no? As we talked before. However, there are some state-of-the-art technologies to chemically recycle polyurethane mattress foams, and here they are clearly targeting the recovery of one main component, the polyol. And in the past years, due to very intensive research, we've been able to show that also the isocyanate can be recycled. And Covestro is one of the pioneers actually in this chemolysis recycling technology.
So I think it's quite amazing that you are actually able to take a cake and transform that back into the eggs and flowers. Again, not being a chemist, this is kind of how I try to understand it. But and actually, we're getting some really interesting comments and questions on the chat. But maybe you can touch a little bit, Karin, on kind of what are maybe some of the missing pieces. If you think about the successes having been done so far, but also the road ahead to make those, you mentioned 40 million mattresses in Europe alone, how to make more of that to go back into eggs and flowers. What needs to change?
Yeah, I mean, the development of this innovative technology And in the investment of the pilot plant that we are operating since some years are for sure very big milestones. Also in realizing our vision of being purely circular. We are convinced that we have really a good solution to close the material loop for polyurethane flexible foams, but we need also a functioning infrastructure. So, and this is something that is really missing. I mean, the material, the mattresses, then they need to be collected, they need to be disassembled. So it's not only the foam that's in a mattress. We have the textile, and then we have other latex, for example, non-PU materials. We have metal springs, and all these components can and should be recycled. And that's where we are working on together with our partners to ensure that mattresses are collected and completely recycled, and not only this waste stream that we need, that this is recycled.
Thanks, Karin. Peter, I want to know from you, how do you see kind of the role of academia and partnerships to advance these goals and make reality? I mean, we just heard from Karin that Covestro as a company is doing a lot to kind of do its parts and use its expertise. But from your point of view, what does it kind of take to make the wheel turn?
Well, I think by the end of the day, you need good ideas. So we would like to attract the best minds to think about aspects that have to do with a circular economy. And I think that takes all kinds. We talk about chemists, engineers, business people. That's one thing. About good ideas, I think good ideas are typically worked on by good people. And one of our products, of course, is the training of extremely good chemists, engineers, and other people from around the world. So I think the CTC is going to be a key provider of experts that hopefully, ideally, early on already work with companies and then find employment. I think that's a key thing. And the other thing that we see with CTC is actually sort of this interface between industry, academia, and also governments and regulatory affairs. Because one of the aspects I see is that I think there's still room for improvement in educating people in decision-making positions about the role of chemistry. And I don't mean it in any bad way, but I think chemistry oftentimes has a very bad reputation, sometimes maybe for the past, for good reason. But I think what we are showing is really a track for chemistry to make it better in the future. And I think that's a fantastic opportunity for the companies, but also for young people in choosing careers. And I think we have an important role in training the best people.
So I think that's great to hear. And actually, we get some audience commentary both on Slido and on the social media channels. Please use the social media channels on the live commentary because we have to look up Slido separately. But actually, there was a question on job markets and job opportunities from one of our audience. Maybe we can, Peter, also continue on that. Kind of how do you see the job market for people who are studying chemistry and circular economy going forward? I mean, is this the future of the educational field?
I think this is an very, very important thing. And in Germany, at least, what we see is really a limited number of people in these areas yet. And I think not only in the academic area, I think academically that's important, but we should remember that 80% of people working in the chemical industry are people not with academic degrees. And I think we are attracting a lot of people now in these more, I think people who studied vocational trades, and I think those people are very important, and they have an extremely good job market right now. And there is a dire need for people in recycling. I can tell you, before we started, the CTC was already asked by recycling companies, can you send people our way? And I think it's going to be a global market, and there's going to be a hunt for global talent. And that's one of the aspects of CTC also, to make sure some of these people at least come to Germany and be trained. And I know they're going to distribute around the world. But I think right now there's a golden opportunity for people in chemistry, and particularly in recycling, because we're going to change the way how chemistry is done in the future.
So thank you, Peter. Karin, you are a mechanical engineer. Did you know when you're studying that you would be working with circular economy?
No, for sure not. At that time, no one was really thinking, about recycling, and this is no, not really. But I think it's really a very exciting path that I took so in the past years, and it's great to see that we can really change the world, make the world a brighter place. So I think that's a good thing what we are doing. Yeah.
Perfect. Let's look at the audience feedback we have on the topic of recycling technologies and which they believe hold the most promise going forward. Improved mechanical recycling, pyrolysis, hydrolysis, lots of chemical engineers in our audience, as we can see. What's your take, Peter?
Well, I think all of them are important, obviously. I think it will be impossible to pick one of them because I think different aspects will take different ways of doing recycling. Of course, you like to keep things as high as possible in the stream, not to downcycle, but to keep them in the loop as long as possible. I believe that the design of new materials will be a very, very important aspect, but it also will take the longest time because from the time you have a new entity, a new chemical entity, until you build a process, that'll take maybe 10 years. Produce it on a large scale. And I think we have to have different aspects because of the different timelines we are dealing with, because we have to deal also with materials that are already placed right now. And besides mattresses, you think of wind turbines, they don't have a life that's going to go forever. These are typically composites, and today we have a very, very hard time dealing with the windmills that already exist. And that's a huge issue of recycling as well. And I think that goes on and on in building construction materials, that goes with textiles. And I think we will need everything that's mentioned here and then more in the future. And we really have to, I think, make people alert that this is such an important societal and global issue.
Thanks, Peter. Karin, what are your thoughts as a chemolysis expert?
Yeah, I actually do not think that there will be a recycling technology. I think that it will always really depend on the type of waste that we need to deal with. I mean, we are currently really relying on mechanical recycling. Plastics are sorted, melted, and then remolded. Often recreates your lower grade plastic products. But I think also that this process is limited due to the harsh conditions, also specially applied each time. So when a plastic is recycled, it loses often their performance. I think that there is a limitation how often a plastic or a piece of plastic can be really recycled mechanically. And I think that to keep plastics really for a very long term in this value cycle, we need alternative strategies, and chemical recycling could provide the potential for infinite recyclability. And there, as mentioned before, it always depends on the waste stream.
So I think it's interesting to see that our viewers now in the chat bring up things that Nina Feckler says. We need complementary recycling technologies. I think we all agree on that. I think that's the sensible way. But the other thing I find interesting is that Dr. Andre Jung says, how can it be ensured that a product I'm buying is synthesized by using recycled raw materials? I think this, by the end of the day, is really going to be a key question. Because you're going to have a situation where you're going to have things made from virgin materials, possibly, of course, fossil resources, and then recycling. And there will be ways of thinking about regulatory issues, things of maybe having labels that ensure all that. And I think this is all part of a regulatory framework that needs to be established. And I think we got to think about this as soon as possible. And we got to think of this also on a global aspect, because if we have different markets globally, one market may have one rule, another one may have a different one. So we need harmonization also in that sense, because otherwise we can have competing systems.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, for picking that up. And thank you for our audience bringing up super interesting viewpoints and questions. I think there's one specifically for Karin. Let's take this one. In your view, what is the biggest difference between mechanical and chemical recycling in terms of sustainable value that can be delivered to consumers?
Well, I think that we talked about it. No? So mechanical recycled, we can only do it for very limited plastic waste, usually for thermoplastic, as they can be really melted down, and often one time because they lose their performance. So in chemically recycled products, this is something that we can do more than one cycle. So, and then this is perhaps even infinite. So we do not lose really any properties and performances in the end product.
Thanks, Karin. I know we are approaching the end of our broadcast time slot, but if there's anything you would like to kind of pick up from our audience stream, feel free to kind of comment on that. Obviously, we cannot go into specifics, but maybe something that you find.
Thomas Gross asked me how many recycling projects we have on our portfolio. I think for us it's important to disclose that the CTC is a startup research facility, so we got a lot of money, more than $1 billion. We have now administration in place, but we have to actually build our facility. We are entering now temporary lab space, and we have projects on polymer recycling that are ongoing, and we have inorganic recycling with one of our colleagues that are going on at temporary facilities. But this is all going to grow, and we're looking forward, of course, connect to the community with input and the different companies that you represent, because for us, the interaction between academia, us, and industry, many of you, is going to be really key in the future.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks, Thomas, for the question. I know we have to close down because our slot is coming to an end, but anything you would like to kind of highlight, Karin?
No, I think that we should keep on going. No? So there are still many challenges, but we need to look forward and work on these challenges and tackle all these issues in order to be fully circular one day.
Perfect, and it's fantastic to see how the circular economy and recycling is really top of mind for so many people around the world. I think it's exciting to see that the awareness is just there and it's growing rapidly. And I think that's also an indication that the work, Peter, you are doing in Germany and around the world should be reaching open arms. And also, Karin, the work that you're doing. It's great to see real solutions, implementable solutions, and economic solutions that truly move the needle, so we can reach the goals, the ambitious goals that we have set ourselves. Maybe just before we close up, Peter, any kind of closing words from your side? How do you kind of see the next couple of years for the CTC that you are establishing?
So in the next couple of years, we hopefully will go ahead to build our new buildings to really become physically there on a former renewable resources plant, a sugar plant, a renewable resource 140 years ago was built. I think this is the future. We're gonna go there, and for us, we're gonna grow. Our goal is to have 1,000 researchers. Right now, we have 8 people there, so we have a long way to go. So for us, it's exciting, but for us, it's important to work with a lot of people in the virtual room right now here. And I think it's really important that you picked up this topic and bring people together at least for 45 minutes now, because by the end of the day, I think we all gotta come together and use those opportunities for our planet.
Perfect. Thank you all very much. We have to find ourselves in the slot. Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you very much, Karin, for investing your time and energy, and of course, generally sharing your thoughts and engaging in this thought-provoking discussion. And thank you, dear online audience, for sharing your feedback both on Slido and also on the chat. If you missed the previous episode with Beatriz Lutz and Melissa from Brazil, United States, there will be a link to that in the broadcast in the comments. I thank you very, very much for joining, and see you next time. Bye-bye.